Hey everyone, Jamie Piers here, VP of Sales and Alliances over at Synatic. I'm going to be leading the webinar today. What I'm going to do quickly is bring up a little screen share and we're going to kick things off. So thank you all for joining us. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today and to explore what data warehousing is in the context of insurance and how we do cool things with data. Please do interrupt me, send messages, carry a pigeon, anything. I'm more than happy to get interrupted. I like being interrupted. I like getting questions. As I say here, it lets me know I'm not putting you to sleep, so it's cool to interact. And I've got two folk on the call from our side, Amanda and Braden, and they'll moderate for me and let me know if there are any questions that come around as we go through the session today. So that's a little bit of the agenda that we're going to head through today. I'm going to pop on to first talking point, just a little bit of info as to what data warehousing is. So what we're expecting today is we're expecting varying levels of technical skill set within the folk that we're talking to. And what I'd like to do is just set a baseline of what is a data warehouse. So a data warehouse is extracting data from multiple sources and locations, aggregating that so that we can then visualize, report on it, and we can run our BI platforms on top of that. So the concept there is to bring disparate sets of data together in a single unified view of the data so that we can do something with that data. So I'll talk a little bit more further on in the session around how data warehousing isn't necessarily the whole of the story. So we'll talk about how we can look at then utilizing that data optimally once we've got it aggregated. But the concept for today is that we will look at saying, well, how do we get this data together? And what are the business benefits? What are the challenges to that? And then we're going to actually talk turkey around what Synatic does and how it does it. So what I always like to remind people of when we start talking about new things to businesses or enhancements to businesses is that we must always be cognizant of what you have built. You know, we've got multiple agency owners and multiple large insurers, carriers on the call as well today. So we always got to be cognizant of saying, well, we have achieved a lot as well. You've got running businesses, you've got businesses that are busy and that are efficient and that are doing things. So what I always want to be cognizant of there is never feel the need to beat yourself over the back and say like I haven't achieved because I haven't got a data warehouse in place yet. It is part of the journey. It is not the be all and end all. So just because Joe Blogs down the road has a data warehouse and you don't, like, it's cool. We can take you on that journey of putting one in place. And also it's very important to understand that within that being part of the journey, there's a broader data journey that a business will go on and that a business will engage in to go to a holistic data point. One of my biggest pet hates is things that what I call is that CEOs put up on PowerPoints to make themselves look smart. I'm not dissing the CEOs out there. It's one of those things that we all too often get caught up in. Is we get caught up in this and worked up about things like AI, BI, big data, metrics, catalogs, fabrics, data fabrics, and ultimately we tend to take a very pragmatic view of the world at Synatic. We talk a lot about FOGs. So FOGs is fear of getting started. And we use that in just about every webinar that we actually do. And the reason for that is people see this as an insurmountable task, as a large task that we have to, go and climb Mount Everest or eat the proverbial elephant. And the whole concept is to say, like, throw the buzzwords away and just get stuff done. In less polite company, GSD, the S stands for not stuff, but an expletive. But I tend to keep it pretty tidy on webinars. But the the whole idea is to move towards saying, well, how do we get stuff done and how do we progress you on your data journey without having to, rip up the core of your business, because you have built a business, you have a going concern that is making money. So we want to make sure that we take you on that journey and go through a process of where you're at. And we'll talk a bit about strategies today and things to be careful of. So it's an interesting stat. Over 50% of data warehousing projects actually fail. And the reason why they fail is I'll talk through a couple of points here is um, a big reason why they fail is lack of specific industry knowledge and understanding the nuance of what insurance involves. And I'm obviously talking about 50% data warehousing across all industries there, but very often we find that bringing in third parties and additional partners it ends up with bringing in people who don't actually understand the core of what makes up insurance and how insurance works. We're heavily focused on the insurance sector, so we understand all the nuance around direct bill, agency bill, whatever it may be, policies, etc., etc. So there's a lot of exciting things we're doing in the space at the moment. We're working on 3 projects with top 100 agencies at the moment, specifically aggregating out data and building out data warehouses into their data model. We find very often that insurance is being the nuanced industry that it is. There's movement and flexibility in data models and data structures and what we need to account for as we go through this journey of building out our data warehouse and understanding the data sets that we have. And very often there's inflexibility designed into the core of building out that data warehouse in terms of the technology set used that says that a policy has to look like this and a policy can only look like that and the policy shall look like this. And the problem is that very often doesn't work. And we deal even down to very complicated systems, the likes of Sagitta's and Duck Creek's. So obviously agency and carrier side there respectively. And they actually have the ability to have that flex and friction of changing the construct of what a policy looks like halfway through your usage of the system. Now, we need to deal with that. We need to move that data into the data warehouse, structure it so that we can still report on it, note that it's changed in structure, and then work with that data. And that's a core factor of what makes data warehousing successful is the ability to move with the flex and friction of a business as it goes along. Naturally, there's complexity with that, and in the same breath, Sagitta and Duck Creek struggle with exactly the same things there. There's an inherent complexity to that data. And even within the more standard modeled out data, things like Applied Epic and AMS 360, even there's still complexity within that data. So, Applied Epic is quite a flexible system in that you can design it to how you want it to be. The challenge with that is that no Applied Epic is the same across multiple customers. So you can never take one rule set to an Applied Epic implementation and say, this is how the data is going to look. So there is complexity in that. Degrading performance over time is a challenge for building out data warehouses. We need to optimize that warehouse to make sure that the data is being produced rapidly. Legacy tech is a massive challenge. So again, we go back and we said we look at the likes of Rocket Universe underpinning Sagitta. So Rocket Universe is quite an old database. It's incredibly powerful, but it is legacy. And how do you take that data, modernize it? I mean, I know there's the tool from Welland that does that. There's varying levels of knowledge around that and varying levels of report backs from the industry on that. But in many ways, we compete with Welland in that space, but keep the data in its native format. And then naturally, there's the up-to-date timing, so making sure that your data is regularly updated. So a lot of warehousing projects, what they'll do is they'll go and say, cool, we'll do a once daily dump of data. What we're finding in experience with rolling out with our customers is that very often that's just not good enough anymore. If I'm running a report now, I need to see the data as it stands now. If I'm running in my BI tool and I want to report on, my policies to date for the year, I want to see all my policies to date for the year. I want to see yesterday's results. Naturally, that's more important when you're doing a month-on-month performance indicator or a year-on-year or quarter-on-quarter. One of the things we're finding is changing dramatically in the industry now, especially with the rate of acquisition. So there's a lot of acquisition activity in the industry per se, both carrier side and agency side. What is happening there is, and we've actually shapeshifted an entire conversation around how one of our customers is implementing their data strategy right here, right now. So what they were doing is they were taking their acquired agencies from Hawksoft, from Nexture, et cetera, and QQ, and then converting that data into Applied Epic. Now, the issue with that, well, actually what they were doing is they were going through EasyLinks and then EasyLinks to Applied Epic. Long story. But what we've done now is we've changed the nature of the conversation in that we said, well, hang on a sec, there's an option here. There's a reason why you bought that agency. It's because it's efficient and it's doing good work and it's profitable. And we want to keep profitability. So what we've done is we've changed that conversation to being, well, instead of importing that data from QQ Catalyst into EasyLinks into Applied Epic, just leave it in QQ. We'll take the data out of QQ, put it into the data warehouse. You can run all your reports and your numbers out of the data warehouse, and you can report in it to your heart's content, but let the agency be. So there are times where, yes, that strategy isn't necessarily pervasively true. So there are times where we still need to take that data and put it into their core Applied Epic system. But it is nonetheless a super interesting point, is that this time frame of, well, we've acquired an agency and 1 month later we want it part of our operating reporting, now is entirely plausible, whereas before it took them 3 to 6 months, depending, sometimes longer, but don't tell anyone I said that, and it would take that length of time to onboard them onto the system because it's an onerous task to import that data into the Applied Epic solution. Then one of the key things we solve is just this multiple tools concept. You talk, and I said up front, I hate buzzwords, so please don't get me wrong, I'm not using buzzwords here. We get ETL, which is extract, transform, load. It's picking up lots of data and moving it to the data warehouse. We incorporate that with integration, we incorporate that with data warehousing, and we've got a single solution that covers the data needs of your organization, and that's really where Synatic plays. I'm not going to read through these points here, just to understand the process of how you build out a data warehouse, and I'm going to come back to a lot of these points when I conclude the discussion around how we can increase the speed around implementing these strategies. And really, Jamie, what you want to, yeah, shoot.
We have a question in the chat from Adam.
Adam. Cool.
So the question, I was going to say, so the question is, do you see consistency on the data agency owners are wanting to report on, or is it more agency by agency?
No, great question, Adam. So we see a lot of consistency there, Adam. So really, there are a couple of core things that everyone wants to see, and they want to see it just about the same across the board. So the core things are things like renewals, they are new business, they are cancellations. So those pretty much dictate your sales figures. So You really want to drill down into those three things. You want to see year on year, you want to see quarter on quarter, and you want to see month by month there. So that's a very typical requirement set there. And then you want to see things like book of business, and you want to see um, uh, your aged reporting on both debtors and creditors, more primarily on debtors. So those pretty much those five are absolutely stock standard. They can just drop and roll as is. Are there tweaks that are needed? Absolutely. So there's never a 100% fit. In Synatic's world, what we aim to do is productize the data needs of insurance organizations, and then to have a kind of a 10% tweak. So one of my favorite sayings is you're unique just like everyone else. So that's just one of those things that folk tend to like to think of themselves as 100% unique, and we do things totally differently. Usually it's that 10% little enclave of stuff we do differently that makes us unique, that positions us differently. And that's what we tend to focus on, to say, like, what makes your business processes tweaked and unique. But entirely 100% agreed. Well, I think the inference or the leading question there was, do people have the same requirement across the bunch? And yes, they do. So we provide for all of that. Hey, Adam. So how are folks usually looking at their book? By line, by state, by multi-line, or all of the above? So yes, all of the above. So what we're tending to do, and I'll show you a little bit of what Synatic does in a couple of minutes. Not to waylay the questions, I enjoy the questions. As I said earlier, it makes it a little bit more real and lets me know that people are listening and not sleeping. So what we do is, when we produce the book report, or whichever report it may be, you can pick which line you want to report on. You can pick which entity within the broader group that you want to report on. If you're running a group, naturally, if it's a single agency, then that by inference is the same thing. But what we allow you to do is pick which business within the group, pick which line of business, which state, etc., etc. We've done some heat mapping of things like cool bits of data from Hazard Hub, because people wanted to start seeing that. So we've done quite a bit in that space to go and produce that data. So just in terms of this process, this bit of info has been up for quite a while now, but one of the things I really like to focus in on, hone in on here, is to iterate and perfect. So what we are obsessed by at Synatic, and we talk about this quite a lot. We talk about, if you're 1% better today than you were yesterday, the cumulative growth is significant. And be better today than you were yesterday. It's that kind of continuous improvement of ourselves as human beings and as people working in Synatic. So we talk about that ethos as ourselves, as our business. What we also talk about that is in the context of our customers, and saying to customers, guys, you're never going to get it right 100% right at the beginning. It's impossible. And again, it comes back to that concept of fogs, of that fear of getting started, because the reason why people have that fogs is because they want to achieve everything at once. And realizing that there's a starting place to taking that first step and getting going with that first step is pivotal to your journey to success, or your journey to where you want to get to. Personally, I believe that a journey to success there is no success destination. There's only a journey that is ongoing, but be that as it may, there can be successes within that. So we're very passionate about saying iterate, innovate. It is how business is working more and more in this newer age that we're heading into. It's this continuous innovation, iteration, growth, getting better, finding holes where you're not better, and fixing those. And that, all in all, is what we look at as a journey here. Cool. So here's a little diagram, and I want to pause it a bit on this diagram, and you'll see that there's cool little moving thingies here. And this is really where we get excited about data. So I talk a lot about in a lot of sessions with customers. I talk about giving us a difficult data challenges is like offering a kid dessert for dinner. So it is our pudding. It's what we get excited about. And what we're talking about specifically today is this area in the middle where we talk about the BI, the AI platform, operationalized data, data lake, transform data. But really what we're saying here is this is where your data gets aggregated from multiple sources of information. We're an Accord partner, so we can work with Accord systems, multiple PaaS systems, multiple AMS systems. We've worked with a lot of solutions, and what we look to do and what we have done, and we put some significantly senior resources on making sure that we've got this, is we've actually put together an insurance data model. So if we, and I'm going to quickly flick back one side, the slide, sorry, or I'm not. I'm going to find my slideshow, and then there we go. That modeling of data is very often, and what modeling of data means, sorry, and I said I'd speak to folk who may not be that technically aware. What modeling of data means is it means taking data from multiple sources, deciding on what we want to report on, and then extracting that data and putting it into that model so that we can report on it, so that we can put our BI tools on top of it and we can make sense of that data. It's a typically quite an elongated portion of this data warehousing journey. So what we've done at Synatic is we've specifically gone and said, well, actually, we'll go and build out a standard model for you. And we've built out a standard model for insurance data, not that it's the be all and end all. So it's not the end point and got to be everything and it has to look like that. The concept is that it gives you your sort of your blueprint to work from. And then what we start doing is we start saying, well, okay, so you've got applied TAM data. Cool, we'll pull that TAM data in. Okay, so you've got QQ Catalyst data. We'll pull that data in. Okay, so you've got Hawksoft data or EasyLinks data or 360 data or Epic data, and the list goes on. And the concept is that we can then pull that data together, aggregate it, and then report on it out of a single point. And it speeds up that momentum. The additional cool thing we do is I'm talking a lot about what I talk about as aggregation. So that's aggregating multiple sources of data. What we also do is we then go and talk about integration. And I know that this isn't the point of the session, so I'm going to make this point super short. But what we do is we can then go and take this aggregated data and push it onto your surrounding ecosystem of solutions. So whether that be Salesforce or HubSpot or Relativity 6 or Wonderwrite or whatever it may be, we can go and take this data and we can push it in and out of other solutions. So what that means is, like you'll see here, we can push it into Salesforce and your CRM or a customer portal or a ratings engine, so on and so forth. And that means that we can both aggregate and report on our data through BI, as well as integrate that data onto other solutions. And then what we can do, which is super cool, is you can then go and say, well, we're going to take data out of, let's use AMS 360, push it into our data warehouse, go and fetch our updated NAICS codes from Relativity 6, pull that back into the data warehouse and push that back into AMS 360 so that AMS 360 can automate the production of your Accord forms. So now creating an Accord form in AMS 360 is optimized because now I don't need to go and put my NAICS code in manually every time I produce my Accord form out of 360. And that was a big
Question
mouthful.
real quick, Jamie.
Yeah,
A question real quick. How often does Synatic pull in data to the data warehouse to update reports? Is it real time, nightly, or monthly?
So yeah, that goes back to one of the points I made earlier. Let me skip back quick. So when we were talking about how up to date is your reporting, so Synatic can pull in data as regularly as you want it. So what we're finding again is that folk are moving away from wanting this nightly download or this daily download, because when I'm in the moment and I want to report on my data here and now, I want to report on my data here and now. I don't want to have last night's data. So we pull in the data as regularly as is needed. Usually it's every kind of 15 minutes to half an hour. Sometimes that's all the way down to 5 minutes. It can even get lower if you need it to be. So typically we find that, kind of every 15 minutes is sufficient, and we know that that data is up to date. Cool. Cool. So what I wanted to do then is hop out of the slideshow a little bit and then just talk a little bit of Turkey, as I like to say, and actually show a little bit about what Synatic does and how it works. So I'm going to stop that screen share quick and bring up my Synatic instance here. And we're just going to explain the sort of concepts that we're looking for out of, or that we've spoken about in the session today, but explain it in the context of what Synatic does. So with Applied Epic, so I've got an example of an Applied Epic, an EasyLink, and an AMS 360. Just happens to be the demo that I built here, or that we built here, sorry. And then what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about how we go and show that data on Power BI and expose that. So on the left here, you'll see that we've got AMS 360, Applied Epic, and EasyLinks. And the reason why I'm showing this is not because I want to turn this into a demo. It's because I want to get to the point where I actually show you the reports and what's possible out of Synatic. So here you'll see that we've got an Applied Epic connection. So Applied Epic does a solution called BDE, which is a bulk data extract. Don't Google BDE. And now that I said don't Google BDE, probably means y'all are going to go and Google BDE, but it gets it's got a different meaning in common colloquial usage at the moment. But anyways, I'm hoping that created a couple of smiles your side for anyone who knows what that is. So out of bulk data extract, what we do is we get data from Applied Epic, and we can go and query that data straight out of SQL Server. So SQL Server, for those of you who don't know, is a databasing engine. What we're then doing is we're taking that data and we're loading policy data into Synatic's built-in data warehouse. Now, it's important to note that Synatic's data warehouse allows you to do anything with the data. So you can throw anything with it. Throw anything at it. So even if the data construct changes as you're formulating the data warehouse, and as time goes by, Synatic can handle that. And then sitting inside that data warehouse, inside Synatic, is then a bunch of data that shows me what is sitting inside the system. So you'll see my agency code, and I've got all sorts of different data sitting across here. This is scarified data, and it's been anonymized, so please don't stress. We're not showing customer data here. And you'll see that I've got all of my different sets of data sitting in the system here. So what we then are doing is we're creating a record of that data within Synatic. And we proceed to go and do that across EasyLinks, Applied Epic, and AMS 360. So here we go and get our EasyLinks policy data in, and we put that into buffer. And we then go and push the same policy data from AMS 360. So all the while, what we're doing is we're pulling data out of the solution and we're going pushing that into the Synatic data warehouse. And then we go and map that data up together into that pre-formulated insurance data warehouse model. And that then exists as a solution that we can then go and put our reporting stack on top of. And that's literally how Synatic works from a data warehousing point of view, is pull data out of source system, put it into what we call buffers, which is the data warehouse within Synatic. We dump that data in, and then we expose it through a Power BI plugin, and boom, the data's in Power BI. Now, whether you then, as a customer, would want to go and do something different with the data and go and formulate your own reports, cool, happy days. But the idea is that we then get to these sorts of reports. And this is quite a busy BI report. We tend to narrow that down a little bit for people who want more simple reports and to keep it super focused. But effectively, this is new business renewals and cancellations reports. So you'll see that I start off with my cancellations. And here, circling back to Adam's question, is we can then go and filter for a line of business and go and report on that. So nothing challenging about that. And then we can do the same thing around new business. And you'll see that I've got my my full stack of data here, and I can go and click and change it as I want. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to go and change it for a specific period of December, and you'll see that it'll go and change the metrics here as I go through, and it'll show me accordingly what I've done. Same concept on renewals as well. So these again are the kind of the default reports that come out of Synatic. They don't necessarily have to be used as such, but they are pretty powerful out the box reports. And then very similarly, we've got our book of business reports where we can go and look at premiums. Again, we can go and filter this out by branch, by line of business, by region, so on and so forth. And it gives us the ability to very quickly get this dipstick look at what's in the book of business, and then gives me the ability to drill through and go into the actual detail of what I'm reporting on there. Okay. So check in if there's questions quick. There are no more questions. So with going at finishing up 20 minutes early so that we can make a nice quick wrap of this. What I'm going to do lastly is I'm going to skip back to just conclusions, and then we'll wrap it from there. So what we're finding sets a lot of these discussions apart at the moment is it's all about speed to market, especially in the mid and lower end of the market. What we're finding is that folk need to do stuff with their data now, because what they've had the frustration point of they don't have the capital that let's say a large carrier of, let's go and use a big one like HCC Tokyo Marine. They don't have the capital to go and invest in herds of staff that go and do amazing things with data. So this creates a lot of pressure on them from a point of view of maybe it's a mid-market player who can't go and do cool stuff with their data, but they're really feeling the pinch now of needing to do cool stuff with their data. And where this benefit of having a pre-configured insurance data model and being able to say, here's your data model, fill it with data, and we'll fill it for you, is it's a pretty powerful story to take to market. And that means that you get access to that data at speed. So it was interesting, I was pitching 2 weeks ago at a smallish agency, about 30 staff, and literally the ops manager had been sat down and she'd had her annual review and told, you're doing a great job on making stuff happen, but we need to get more strategic with our data. And her response was, well, you're expecting me to keep up the pace with being the ops manager and making sure that all stuff's happening and that the business, the day-to-day running of the business is happening, but now you need me to go and create reports on it. And it was a beautifully timed conversation, because it was literally like, cool, we've done AMS 360 before, we know how to report on it, here are your default set of reports, what else do you need to see? Cool, happy days, produce, go. and it was a very rapid speed to market because it meant that we just understood what her needs were. We understand insurance. We've got consulting friends of the industry, one of whom is on the call. Welcome, Michael Trillion. And we work very closely with him, and he kind of gives us guidance when we don't understand very specific things, because the nature of insurance is it's deep and it's complicated once you get below a couple of degrees below the surface. So why Synatic, and how do we start on this journey? So what I'd encourage you to do is, even if you don't select Synatic, so put Synatic aside, don't sit on your hands and do nothing about your data. So even if you do look at different solutions, or if you've got different solutions in play, it doesn't have to be Synatic, but just don't sit on your hands waiting, because the longer you wait, the bigger the mountain gets to climb in your journey. So start with your data now. Don't wait for tomorrow is really the message there. So again, GSD, get stuff done, move forward, take that first step forward. Even if the first step forward is a mistake, it still will have learnings that come out of it. We don't talk about mistakes at Synatic, we talk about learnings. So we talk about what was the positive outcome out of a negative situation. Even though it was negative, it may be bad, there's got to be some positive in it. How do we get better at it so it makes us that 1% better today than we were yesterday? And how do you take those steps forward? So in terms of just coming back up a couple of points there, so we've got an existing data model, existing reports, and we know insurance, and we're heavily, heavily invested in the insurance market at the moment. So I hope that you learned something new about data warehousing today. I hope that you learned something new about Synatic today, and we'd love to have further discussions with anyone who has anything that they'd like to raise with us. You can hit me up at jamie@synatic.com, or just www.synatic.com, and we'd love to take you through how you can progress now. And with that, unless there are other questions, I think we're going to sign off, and thank you for attending.